What would you do if your car stopped responding right on the last lap of a race that you had been dominating for 55 laps? What if your engineer tells you that everything is fine, while you can barely turn the steering wheel? Lewis Hamilton had completed 55 laps with surgical precision. Since the start of the 2025 United States Grand Prix, he had maintained a constant, intelligent pace, defending a solid fourth position without unnecessarily wearing out the tires or compromising the team's strategy. The Circuit of the Americas, a layout known for its aggressive elevation changes and high-speed corner sequences, appeared to be under control. Everything indicated that the British driver would leave Austin with valuable points and a race without major problems. But in Formula One, everything can change in seconds. Halfway through the final lap, in an area of the circuit where cars go through the famous fast-track sequence from turn 3 to 10, Hamilton sensed something was wrong. Very badly. The car's steering stopped responding accurately. The car began to exhibit understeer as brutal as it was sudden. Hamilton immediately assumed he had suffered a puncture, most likely in the right front tire, which led him to aggressively reduce the pace. He took his foot off the accelerator, braked earlier than usual, and began driving with a mixture of distrust and intuition, as if he were trying to save a race on the verge of technical collapse. But this is where the most puzzling begins. From Ferrari's wall, his engineer radioed that the sensors indicated no anomalies. There was no pressure loss. No damage was detected in the suspension, brakes, or steering. Everything is fine, was what was communicated to him. However, for Hamilton, who was inside the car, nothing was right. In his own words after the race, "I went into turn 5 and felt like I hit something. I thought I had a flat. Then I braked into turn 11 and the car just didn't want to stop. I thought, what the hell is going on?" From a telemetry point of view, what happened was a sudden drop in performance that covered the entire section between turn 4 and 11, right where the circuit demands more from the front axle. During those critical seconds, Hamilton's driving style changed radically. He went from aggressive and controlled driving to cautious, almost defensive driving. The lap time plummeted. In less than half a sector, he lost almost 4 seconds, an eternity in Formula One terms. And behind came Oscar Piastri with his McLaren, pushing with still competitive tires. Piastri smelled the opportunity. McLaren reported in real time that the Ferrari was losing pace. "Si lograba mantenerse en zona DRS, tenía una posibilidad real de atacar en la recta final." The visual difference was reduced to meters. Under normal conditions, that position was Hamilton's. But now, with SF-25 acting as if he were wounded, the fight was hand-to-hand, with a single mistake enough to change everything. And yet, just when it seemed like disaster was imminent, the problem disappeared, as if it had never existed. From the exit of turn 11 onwards, the car began to respond again. The steering regained precision. The massive understeer stopped suddenly, with no visible adjustments or intervention from the pit. It was like someone had flipped a switch. Hamilton, with the coolness that characterizes him, accelerated again and managed to defend fourth position by just 1.1 seconds. Those types of incidents in the last lap are not easily forgotten. Not just because of what could have been a loss of points, but because of what it reveals about the car, the team, and the level of trust or mistrust between the driver and those on the other side of the radio. Because when your engineer tells you that everything is fine, but you can barely keep the car on the track, the problem is no longer just technical. It's philosophical, strategic, and it's human. What happened in Austin was not a one-off failure. It was an amplified reflection of a tension that has been accumulating since Hamilton arrived at Ferrari. Because for a pilot accustomed to excellence, the slightest symptom of technical disconnection or lack of response at the most critical moment can mean the beginning of a breakdown. And most disconcerting, the car recovered on its own. From the exit of turn 11, the SF-25 once again operated as if nothing had happened. What can cause a fault that comes and goes without external intervention? The strongest theory is a momentary loss of aerodynamic pressure, possibly due to a blocked cooling duct or a thermal spike that altered the flow under the car. These phenomena, although brief, can destroy all the pilot's confidence. Because if the car can spontaneously fail once, it can do so again. And in modern Formula One, trust is everything. The SF-25 is a car with character, but not the kind of character a world champion needs. He is like an unpredictable partner, brilliant at times, dangerous at others. Hamilton, who spent more than a decade at Mercedes developing stable, reactive, and coherent machines, now faces a Ferrari that seems to change its behavior with every corner, every lap, every change in temperature. And no matter how talented he is, no driver can compensate for a car that does not behave logically. This car, which promised to return Ferrari to the top, is showing the same chronic symptoms that have kept the Scuderia from success in the last decade. Broken promises, poorly focused development, and technical decisions that contradict the reality on the track. And in the midst of all that, Hamilton, a methodical, demanding, and brilliant driver, finds himself fighting an enemy that he cannot see, but that manifests itself just when he needs results most. When Lewis Hamilton took his foot off the accelerator on the final lap of the United States GP and braked prematurely for fear of possible failure in his car, he wasn't just managing a technical emergency. He was making critical decisions alone, without the immediate support or understanding of his team. And that, in modern Formula One, where communication between driver and engineer is a vital bridge, represents a dangerous fracture. Ferrari informed him by radio that everything seemed normal. There were no alerts on the sensors, no puncture or system failure was detected. But from the cockpit, Hamilton felt something completely different. Extreme understeer, loss of directional control, unresponsive brakes. And his instinct, forged by almost 2 decades at the highest level, told him that he should protect himself. The team's reaction, however, was one of technical coldness, blind attachment to data. And here the real problem arises. In Maranello, technology is winning a battle that should be shared with the pilot's sensitivity. This is not an isolated case. It's a pattern that Ferrari has historically repeated. On multiple occasions, the team has prioritized numbers over human perception. But Formula One is not a laboratory. It is a war of sensations, reflections, and interpretation in real time. An engineer can have access to all the car's data, but he will never have the same level of situational awareness as the driver who is feeling the vibrations, the grip, the load, the steering, the fear. At Ferrari, that symphony has been replaced by noise. Communication has been more structured, more rigid. There is less room for improvisation, for emotional interpretation of the moment. And that translates into a loss of operational efficiency. Because when a driver hesitates, even for a fraction of a second, performance plummets. And Hamilton is hesitating. Not his talent, but the team's ability to support him with the speed and clarity he needs. The Austin incident is just the most visible point of this disconnect. But the tension had already begun weeks before. In Shanghai, for example, Ferrari was excessively conservative with the car's configuration after the disqualification due to flat bottom wear. That cost him pace in qualifying, and although Hamilton managed to shine in the sprint, it was evident that his suggestions were not implemented with the aggressiveness he expected. After the race, Hamilton declared that there are still many things we want to change, but time is of the essence. That seemingly innocent phrase hides a clear criticism. The team's technical response is arriving late. The SF-25 has many technical defects, but the most serious of all is not in the suspension or the aerodynamics. It is in the line of communication that should link Hamilton with Ferrari. A line that, for now, seems increasingly weaker. What happened in Austin was not simply a technical error. It was a warning. A silent scream that resonated louder than any radio, deeper than any telemetry data. It was the tangible manifestation of a problem that goes beyond understeer or braking distribution. It was the brutal reflection of an emotional and operational fracture within Ferrari. A fracture that, if not repaired, can condemn an entire season. Lewis Hamilton is not just any driver. He is a historical figure. A competitor who has rewritten the books of Formula One not only because of his talent, but also because of his ability to evolve, to build winning environments from within. At Mercedes, he took a team hurt by uncertainty after the 2014 regulation change and transformed it into a dynasty. That transformation was no coincidence. It was the result of a symbiotic relationship between pilot and engineer, between intuition and data, between humanity and technology. And what Hamilton found at Ferrari so far is an ecosystem that remains trapped in its old ghosts. A team that has not yet learned to merge the sensitivity of the pilot with the coldness of its simulations. It continues to make decisions based on what the computer says, even when the driver behind the wheel is saying the opposite. In Austin, Hamilton knew something was broken. And it wasn't just the car. Because when a team tells you that everything is fine, while you can barely turn, what is failing is not the front wing. It's trust. That trust is built in training, in the data room, in every conversation between engineer and pilot, in every strategic decision-making. And when it breaks, the seconds lost on the track are not just time. They are symbols of a team that is not in tune with its leader. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.